Everyone, welcome back. This is episode 31 of Tough Lit Podcast. And with me today is another podcaster, a weightlifter, a coach, president of a WLC. Like, he's doing everything. It's Travis Cooper of the Weightlifting Scoop. And today we decided to team up and talk to you guys about the amazing performance the other day of Team USA and the young Hampton Morris. Travis, what's up, man?
Yeah, what's going on? So yeah, thanks for having me. We're co-hosting this, so I'm going to post this on the Weightlifting Scoop with the audio, and Matt over here is going to post it on his typical media forums with video and audio. So if you're listening on our side, then you can check out the video as well. So yeah, Hampton, man, holy smokes, bronze medalist. Super proud of him, and just happy for USA Weightlifting.
They did it, man. Mike's been saying we can do it for years, and it's done now.
Yeah, and we had a really close going into the Tokyo Olympics. We had Harrison Morris, similar last name, not spelled the same, and CJ Cummings, and we had an outside shot to medal in that Olympics on the male side, and we did. Kate Vibert ended up medaling, and so we could have had a men's and a women's medal, and we have never had a men's and a women's medal. And, a lot of that really has to do with the fact that women's weightlifting was introduced in 2000. So there hasn't been as many chances. But since 2000, we have medaled several times on the women's side. Now Hampton's done it. So it'd be really cool to see Olivia or Mary take home a medal as well and make history. Jordan lifted, she got fifth, did pretty solid, but didn't quite medal. But yeah, still, she's a two-time Olympian and killed it as well. So congratulations to her.
Yeah, I think her performance is really good. I mean, you have trained your butt off for another 4 years after a compressed 3 years, right? And then you're like, you're there a second time, and it's a totally different interaction too. That's the other thing with Jordan that I was talking to my athletes with at the gym is like her first Olympic interaction with that whole thing was the CVID. I don't want to get like the algorithm blocking our stuff. Didn't like it was a totally different experience, So now she was actually able to probably go there and like, I don't know, maybe enjoy it a little bit more. So kind of makes you a little bit more enthusiastic probably about the whole event. She really did much better in my opinion, and it was a great show watching that.
Yeah, so the weightlifting I think is usually on the front end of the Olympics, and it usually was swimming. So it's like the first few days the weightlifting starts, and then this time it was during the second part of the Olympics, more with track and field. And so I know like in 2016 when Morgan King went and competed, she wasn't able to go to the opening ceremonies because she lifted the next day. And Jordan, the same thing. I'm not really sure what the rules were in Tokyo, if it was just because of the competition or because of COVID rules, but I think that she didn't go to the opening ceremony because she was lifting the next day. And so this time she got to go experience the opening ceremony, do a bunch of training in the village, lift. She made a total, got fifth place, and was competitive in the session, and then now gets to hang out the rest of the couple weeks. So, and also in Tokyo, they were based out of Hawaii. And so what happened is they would like send them, they would lift, and then they would come right back home. So they didn't really get an Olympic experience. They lifted at the Olympics, but they didn't get to hang out in the village and meet all the other athletes. Yeah, it wasn't like a whole lot of social interaction with other sports. And I think that's like what a games experience is all about. Like you can go to the weightlifting world championships, but when you go to Pan Am Games, and then I've never been to the Olympic Games, but I can only imagine it's amplified as compared to the Pan Am Games in the camaraderie and just the respect that you have for everyone, because it's a small it's a small window, so only so many people get to experience it, and you're experiencing it with all those people, and it just gives you this extreme bond.
Yeah, and it's gotten smaller, so even less of a pool to hang out with. You're basically hanging out with like the elite of the elite that you guys continue to go through the same struggles with to keep getting there.
Yeah. With the weightlifters, and especially when you're talking about the U.S. weightlifters, because there's only 5 over there, so that's pretty small. But I'm talking even like extended, like meeting everyone. And, like the weightlifters, they got to meet Snoop Dogg, like,
Yeah.
they
Yeah. That was pretty cool.
got to do certain things that most people will never get to do. But, the average person, they may not know a whole lot about the Olympics or the people competing in the Olympics, but they know who Snoop Dogg is, so they'll think that's pretty cool at the
Yeah.
least.
And if he thinks weightlifting's cool, then it's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, well, I heard he's getting paid $500,000 a day to be over there.
I
So
also heard that.
I would think any sport is cool for $500,000 a day.
I would probably go broadcast and talk of any sport.
Yeah.
I would talk about Harry Potter Quidditch if you're going to pay me $500,000 a day.
Yeah. I would be pulling all nighters, try to figure out everything about the history of the
Exactly.
sports and learn who's who.
Yep.
But yeah. So it's pretty cool though. That was a cool video.
It was a great performance so far. And we had, I mean, again, like the three you named off, and we'll get to probably chatting about them even later. But even more awesome performances probably ahead of us. And like the two girls, and then also like Wes. Like there's another one in there that is wild carded to like get it done.
Yeah. So yeah, it looks like the other two women do have a legitimate chance at medaling. Wes's weight class is just so dang competitive. Depending on what kind of shape he's in, because he hasn't been able to compete for a while, so I really don't know what to expect, and I don't know that many people do except for him and Dave.
Yep.
But at the least, he could potentially break some American records and he'll hit big weights. But that weight class is stacked. I mean, there's like so many people doing 400 plus totals. But Olivia, I can't believe it, but she's favored to win. But we can talk about Hampton a little bit and about the magnitude of what he just did. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Hampton. Obviously you've known him for a number of years. I've been able to interact with him and get to know him. Probably not as close of a level as you have with you being where you are down there and stuff, but every interaction I've had with him is like just the way I've always said, like to my like Hampton. My background's military, right? So like I always relate things back to my time in the service and stuff. Hampton has like that sniper mentality. Like they're very unique mentalities. They're very focused, very dialed in. And the really good ones, like just nothing on the outside is going to affect them. And that's just how that kid has been forever since I can remember meeting him the first time. Like, so,
yeah, I don't know Hampton that well or anything. We're from the same place, but I actually live in Rhode Island now, and he lives in Georgia. But I'm from Georgia, and I spend a lot of time there. But he's so much younger than me. I don't really know him out of a few interactions. We did have the first podcast with him ever, but this was a long, long time ago, and he
had long hair back then.
Yeah, and he was
long hair Ham and short hair Ham. It's two generations.
he was very shy. He was very shy, so we didn't get a ton out of him. We got a little bit out of his dad, but he still wasn't who he is today, right? He was doing things, but he was not the world record holder, Olympic bronze medalist. And he's definitely grown up and matured quite a bit. He's still super young. I mean, my goodness. Yeah. So he could still go 2 more Olympic quads and continue to get better. And then he can maintain for another quad after that, if that's what he chooses to do and stays healthy. There's some ifs there. But he is. And the culture of weightlifting for a while is we have had some very talented athletes. But the culture of weightlifting was a little more social at one point, Hampton really is strictly business. And, he wakes up in the morning and does his training and does his pre-training, measures his vertical jump. And that's what he does every day before training and has a history of that. There's data collection there, right? It's a very scientific approach and data-driven approach. And he's always doing the right things, right? He's not out drinking. He's not out partying. He's not doing these things that some of the talented people of the past were. And I'm not saying anything bad about those people or those actions in the past, right? Because like life is all made out of choices. So there's certain experiences that were a lot of fun, and I don't blame people for wanting to have balance in their lives. But he's like a sniper and gets the job done. And
some people can pull it off, right? Some people can pull that lifestyle off. Just very few.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm I'm in Detroit, so I'll tell my athletes, I'll be like, that's cool, you can go party and everything, but like not everyone's a Rodman, dude. Not everyone's Dennis Rodman. You can't
yeah,
go be
exactly.
crazy, then when you get on the court, just be the best. This is not everyone.
Yeah, and I have a hard time believing that people who do that are still even optimizing their performance, but some people do get away with it, and I've seen, you know, some good results from it. But yeah, I was happy to see that his hard work paid off because he has put everything into this. And if you watch the
Yeah.
Hamp the Champ documentaries that Nate Serwinski did, it'll kind of put that in perspective. You know, that's just a little piece of what he does, right? And it gives you some small insight into it.
Yeah, every aspect, every motion that those two do, him and his dad, are just always direction compass north to their final goal of what, you know, this was. And like speaking on like what you were stating about like him being young and everything, is me and Logan were talking about this, who's competed with Hampton, and we've been on teams together. Is like we were discussing it. Is like the commentators kept noting how, not to use the term, but like older the other athletes in Hamp's session were. And it's like, man, one of them's going on his fifth Olympics. And it's like Hamp could basically just run this weight class for the next two Olympics if he really wanted to at this point, and everybody else just age out as he just ages in even more potentially.
Yeah, and there's so many factors to that, right? Like he's already kind of he's probably has the body that like he couldn't gain any more muscle mass in this weight class or very little. And so he might want to move up a weight class in the future as he matures. So there's a lot of caveats to that, but possibly. I mean, I think he's 20 if I'm not wrong. So he's 20 years old right now. I believe his sporting age might be 21 because I don't think he's a junior anymore. But yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
he had just done his last juniors.
yeah, so you could go 24, 28, 32. Though that's possible. Certainly possible. Now, do you continue to have the same appetite to sacrifice, the same
Yeah.
appetite for pain? Um, through my personal experience, and I've never been as good as Hampton. I've had some success in the sport, but Hampton's obviously at another level. Um, but as I've aged, I didn't really ever feel, and still at the age of 36, I don't really feel like it's not possible to do anything that I've ever done before. But I've taken a route where I have two kids and I have a full-time job, and so my stress outside of training has changed so much that it's difficult to put everything into it. And I will say my appetite for pain is much, much lower. Like there's definitely a point where you start thinking about, hey, I want to walk when I'm 80 and I don't want to train through this pain because it's essentially not worth it. And at some
Yeah.
point when you're training for a big meet, you don't always have that same mindset. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how long he continues to do it and hopefully he can, It is interesting because last quad we had Harrison Morris, who placed fourth, was another phenom lifter, right? And then just decided, hey, weightlifting's not for me. And that's crazy to me as somebody who loves this sport so much, but he obviously didn't have the same passion for it.
Yeah.
And so that's hard for me personally to understand. But he has to be the one that loves it. And obviously he wasn't feeling like he was getting fulfillment out of the sport like I do. So
Yeah.
um
And
yeah.
ultimately, that's what it comes down to, right? And we've chatted on that a little bit. Is like you have to enjoy it, like the whole process. If you're gonna put everything into it, you actually have to be enjoying it. It's
Yeah.
not like you're getting paid lots of money to do this. You're not getting fully supported to do it. You truly have to enjoy what you're doing, and then having a very clear goal of like the and I always tell my athletes at the gym, like, your intrinsic motivation is going to take you way further than any extrinsic. Extrinsic is great, don't get me wrong, but like at the end of the day, you've got to have that little thing inside of you. That's why you keep loading that barbell.
Yeah, and once you have a certain level of success, like for instance, Hampton, I don't think he's the type of person that would get too into this, but I have seen people that when they get attention for their success and or personality or whatever, they start doing it for a different reason than they started doing. I mean, look at like Conor McGregor, for instance, in MMA. Like he starts out, he's extremely motivated, but then becomes the personality of MMA, right? And the UFC. And so he still has that piece, and I think really for him, it's less about the fighting and more about the attention and being Conor McGregor and being recognizable. I think Hamp has the opposite of that personality, so I don't really think that he would be the one to fall into that trap. But when you win a bronze medal, and we'll get into this in a little bit, but the first person to win a medal in the Olympics, not the first person, but the first male to win a medal in the Olympics since 1984, which was a boycotted Olympics. So really, since 1976, you get a lot of attention. Like no weightlifters are ever really shared on Team USA. You know, they're pumping him up. He's probably getting tons of Instagram followers and people reaching out to him. You know, good luck messaging him and getting a response. You'll be buried,
Oh,
right? He's
oh yeah,
probably
there's some
getting hundreds
celebrity
of
DMs in there
congratulations.
and shit too. I
Yeah, yeah.
guarantee.
So you know, no matter what your personality is, when you start getting more attention, it does feel good, and it does change you slightly. Again, I don't think Hampton's the type of person that this would change too much. Um, but it can change the way that you think a little bit and make it difficult to work as hard because you kind of feel like you reached the goal a little bit.
Yeah,
So at least in the short term, you might take the pedal off the gas, right? So
yeah, and then staying hungry, right? How do you stay hungry to sit there and be like, okay, bronze isn't good enough. I want silver, and then I want gold. You know, that whole battle that then plays in your head.
yeah, and we had and one of the things that we kind of slated to talk about was mental health, but you know, CJ Cummings was a medal threat. He won Junior Worlds several times, and I mean, his situation was different where he didn't get that medal, right? And so mentally that was pretty tough, and he didn't have so good of a performance this time because he was dealing with mental health issues, and he kind of seems like he's got that under control now and is training again, but this process is really difficult to get to the Olympics again. And there will be the next person will come behind, right? And the
Yeah,
window of opportunity is really small, and you have to be healthy mentally and physically through the process to get through it to even get back to the Olympics.
yeah,
So
the refit.
yeah, but
So we got Ham's numbers up here. So we had 126 for snatch,
yep.
and then we had 172 for a clean and jerk.
Yeah, so we totaled 298, and I have a picture of the board up on my screen, which nobody can see, but he finished the snatch at 126, and then one,
Which was
two,
what, like six? Was that sixth place for snatch or fifth? Where did that place him?
um, 1, 2, 3, 4. I think it placed fifth, but there was
Fifth.
3 other bomb outs in the snatch with people opening above what Hampton had. So there was one bomb out with a 128 snatch, one bomb out with 134, one bomb out with 135 was the last attempt. So a couple of those people would have been really competitive with Hampton. The guy who bombed out at 128, he's a better snatcher than Hampton, but not even close on the clean jerk. And then
Yeah,
a bomb out at 125. But the guy who bombed out from Italy and the guy who bombed out from Bulgaria, at 134 and 135, those guys could have been really competitive with Hampton. So even though Hampton, you know, we all know he's a clean and jerker and his snatch
yep,
is pretty good, but is a little bit of a weakness in comparison to these other folks. But his clean and jerk is world record status. That opened the door because, you know, after he snatched and you see the board before the results, you're like, oh man, he's going to have his work cut out for him. Because he's going to be behind a lot of people by, you know, 8 to 10 kilos. And so that kind of like, as these bomb outs started to happen, you started to see, okay, like a couple of the competitors. He's only going to have to beat a couple of these guys.
Yeah. And I think that's notable to go over for all the listeners, whether you're experienced or not, because I think even when you're experienced, from at least not to overuse that word experience, but like from my experience, even when you have that behind your belt, you still have moments where you get really full of yourself, or you get eager, or you want the medal versus just the number. And you've worked under a multitude of really good coaches. I've worked under a multitude of good coaches. Like mine have always said, and I've always gone with the approach like that. And I think a lot of people don't learn it till it's too late, and or they've gotten smacked around a few times. But like, you don't win off the snatch. The snatch is to get you into the meet. It's to get you into the meet. It's to get numbers on the board, and then you build on it.
Yeah, yeah, and you have to open at weights that you can make. Ultimately, like in the Olympics, there's only one medal. There's a medal in the total, and so you got to get to the clean and jerk. Because basically, in the Olympics, since there's only one medal, if you bomb out in the snatch, you're done. You do not take
A lot of people don't know
clean and
that, by
jerk
the way.
attempts. Yeah, and the only reason that you can at the World Championships continue is because there's medals on the line for each event. So if you're ever in a meet where there's only a medal for the total at a championship, I mean, obviously the local meet, that's different, but for a championship, then you do not clean and jerk. So like Pan Am Games, Olympic Games.
Which also, as a coach, throws your whole count and plan off really bad.
Yeah,
when,
especially when
when
you
all of a sudden 3 competitors in a small session are not actually taking attempts.
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
That kind of becomes a shit show.
Yeah. And so it definitely changed a bit since Hampton's so spread out. If he was like a snatch specialist, that would have really been tough, right?
Yeah.
Like if he was the guy that was snatching in the mid 40s, but opening in the clean and jerk at 150, 155, then he would have been in trouble here if
Real
those guys
tired.
bombed out because there's nobody before him and he'd be like ending the snatch and starting the clean and jerk, at least in his situation as a clean and jerk specialist and a weaker snatcher, you're going to have maximum rest time between. So fortunately that didn't affect him personally, but I bet it did some of these other people. There's a guy who opened up at 162 in the snatch after snatching 135, and who knows, maybe it did force him to warm up a little too fast. Not have enough rest between.
Yeah. God, man, what a lot of pressure. Like a coach in the back trying to get a count, and then somebody bombs. You're like, oh no.
Yeah.
Then another one, like, oh shit, all our attempts. We need to start touching a bar right now. Fuck.
Yeah, and I honestly don't
I
know.
need you to go to 70, then 120. Thanks. We're going out in 8 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, it is so important as a coach and an athlete, no matter what meet you're at. I mean, this happens at nationals quite a bit. You have to be adaptable.
Yep.
Everything is not going to go perfect. Even if you as a coach or as an athlete, your coach, they can do everything correctly according to the book, but still 5 or 6 people move up and you didn't expect it, or like bomb outs happen, or somebody gets hurt and they pull out of the meet. Like, maybe somebody's going to open the session and you're expecting them to be on 2-minute clocks the whole time. So you're like, oh, that's like five out, 5 that you're counting. And then all of a sudden they pull out due to an injury or decide that they're not going to clean and jerk because they bombed out. Then all of a sudden you're like, oh crap, like that's a huge difference in my count, right?
Yeah.
So you do. I've seen some people that are really rigid. I have to get all of my warm-ups in and I have to do this. I make a point to think about, as I'm making my warm-up progression, like if this happens, like I might have in the snatch like 90, 100, 110. And I'm like, okay, if we get in a tight spot, I'm just gonna go 90, 110. That's the warm-up I'm gonna skip out on.
Yeah.
So yeah, it always pays to think about those things in advance before chaos is ensuing.
Yeah. See, I think really with his snap, like, I mean, he's already right. The best, one of the best at clean and jerks. So even if we shift a little bit of focus onto the snatch of just getting a little bit more technical proficient with it and more under our control to squeeze out what in the next quad he just squeezes out like another 4 to 6 kilos and then just continues to be a great clean and jerker, it should all just do itself perfectly fine.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, he has snatched 130 at 67, and he's clean and jerked like 178. So the weight cut does something.
Yeah.
I don't know
Oh,
how
yeah.
much, but also the next weight class up, the weights that they do are significantly higher. And this time, 67 kilos was not an Olympic weight class.
Mhm.
Like here, you got 310 won the meet, right?
Yeah.
But 354 won the 73s. That's a big difference, and that's an uphill battle. And like Hampton's not really his body doesn't really seem like one where he's going to be a 73.
Yeah.
You know,
Frames.
yeah. Sometimes that can kind of slow you down if you're in the wrong weight class and you're too high. So you want to be in the right weight class ideally. I think 61, 67 makes sense.
He would look like a rhino. The only way you could fill 73 is if he looked like a rhino.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean,
98% muscle.
unfortunately, I mean, that's part of CJ's struggle this squad was that he wanted to kind of move up to 81, but the 73 and 89 were the Olympic categories. So it's like, what do I do? Like I'm
Yeah,
sitting
you're
like
smack dab.
83, 84, like, and I'm planning to thin out a little bit, but like 73 is getting tough and I don't really have the time. So then he's got to go in this unnatural weight class on the other side, and
Yeah.
so it just didn't work out for him personally for a variety of reasons. But you don't want to see the same thing happen to Hampton either. But next quad, like we don't know what the IWF is going to do. We don't know how many Olympic slots we're going to have. So 67 could be the weight class, 61.
As far as I've been told by people that I know, it's staying. That's the unofficial rumor mill. The unofficial from my people's, it's staying the same.
Yeah, I think
But again, anything can change.
I think the hope, which I'm not really sure, the hope is that if things go well and the IOC is happy with the IWF, there's potential to get 8 weight classes back in the Olympics. And if they did that, my understanding is the plan would be to cut the lowest weight class and the highest non-super weight class. So in the men, you would have 61 through 102 plus. And on the women's side, you would have 49 through 81 plus.
Yeah.
And they would hope that, but how realistic is that? I don't know. But and then that would also, because there used to be 8 men's weight classes, 7 women's weight classes. So they want everything to be 100% equal with the weight class distribution. So 8 and 8, and then that would be your full teams, and there would be no non-Olympic versus Olympic weight classes, because when you have 10 weight classes and only 5 are Olympic, you end up getting this weird situation where sometimes people win worlds that like the weight class below them totaled higher. And yeah, like interesting situations like that where there's like some asterisks, and you just avoid all that when you only have the weight classes that are in the Olympics.
They are the weight classes, yeah.
But we'll see, because you're right. Anything could happen. And there's a lot of political decisions.
We haven't been
Yet to be
slapped in
made.
a few months, I feel. So we're doing good.
Yeah.
Overall, no wrist slapping has been happening. So I think one of the big topics people talked about is, and to continue on with our document here, is like the foot slip. A lot of people talked about that and saw it, and we're just like, I know as we were watching the gym, a couple of the athletes were like, not astonished, but they were like shocked. They were like, "Oh, he went up," and I think that shows, like, just to point out quickly, like the confidence. Like, obviously, the coaches got fired up about it. You could hear Gatone hot mic. And Piros was a little upset, and like, every coach is gonna be at that situation when it's happening. But the confidence to stick with their game plan that they've had for months, if not a year, and like stick to it and keep composure and go out there and execute really does show the mental fortitude that Hampton has as an athlete. It's where it was just done. He adjusted. They made a great move. When I saw them move to a different spot on the platform, I made a note of that in my head, and I was like, remember this, because you need to talk about this to so many other athletes, because that's a coaching team and an athlete team that's like, there's an issue. How can we avoid the issue? And they did it. They adjusted. It was great.
Yeah, a lot of times. So some of those platforms can get divots in them, in the center because most people take it in exactly the same spot. So when you get those wooden pieces that come together, sometimes there is a shift. And so it's not too uncommon for someone to roll the bar a little off. And a new platform like that, like with a certain finish, I don't know why he slipped, right? But he did. It's undeniable that he slipped. I'm not saying that it's like uh the director's fault or anything. It might have been his shoes were slippery and they had to wipe them off. It could be the platform was slippery. It could be there was chalk on it. It could just be that the platform is slightly slippery, but if you land completely balanced, it doesn't really matter so if you do it right, it doesn't matter, right? He might have missed that lift anyways, but his foot definitely slipped when you see. So he was actually at weigh-ins. Hampton declared 170. It was kind of interesting. I'm not really sure what was going on, but he declared 125 in the snatch and then came down to 122 and then declared 170. The clean jerk came down to 168. And as I was watching the board during the competition, I was like, 170 does nothing, right? I was like, I hope they move down. I hope they move down. And they did. They came down to 168 and he actually missed. And then 172 was the weight that put him temporarily, which ended up being permanently in the bronze medal spot, which is very interesting because the guy who was in the bronze medal spot opened at 167. Hampton missed 168. And then they were like, hey, we're here for a medal. There's only a total medal. So we either bomb out or we medal.
Yep.
Or at least like make a total going for a medal. And so 172 was the correct weight that put him over that individual. And for whatever reason, that person jumped to 174 to go into silver medal position. It's like they didn't respect Hampton's even though they know he's the world record clean jerker with 176. It's like they didn't respect him jumping over them. Like maybe they just had that much confidence in their lifter to make 174 and get into.
Who was that again that did that?
His name was Mohammed bin Kazdan. MAS is the country code. What is MAS country code? Let me look it up.
Yeah, because I remember seeing that and was wondering like why.
Malaysia.
Okay, yeah, Malaysia. Yeah, because I remember seeing that and I didn't note anything of it, but I remember seeing that jump and I was like, that's weird because it's like all or nothing at this point, and you have to keep a lead on this kid because he's gonna you. It's all on social. You know what he can do. It's not like coaches don't do athlete reports.
Yeah, it's like after Hampton missed 168, they could have, and maybe that was their intention, right? Maybe their intention was because the way it works is you can declare something really high and then come down, but unless the clock like starts on you. But Hampton moved to 172. But yeah, it looks like on the board someone from Thailand took 169. So there was plenty of time for the Malaysians to make an adjustment. They could have taken 170 and possibly put it out of Hampton's range, but they elected to wait to 174 to get into silver medal position. And even let's see, 4 kilos, and that person was ahead of him the whole time. So I'm not really sure, but yeah. So Hampton moves up. The Malaysian stuck at 174. By the time Hampton makes 172, that guy would have had to have taken 173. So why not just take 174? But strange choice there. But again, it's like opening a door, right? There's a couple of people. The one guy that bombed out that snatched 135, his last attempt that he missed was 165. So that's 300. So a lot of people just going for broke, and Hampton was the one that came out in this situation. And it allowed him to take a world record attempt on his third. But yeah, they had to take 172 because 168 was going to put him in fourth place. It doesn't do anything. So at least you want to pressure that other person to have to make another lift to beat you and have your third attempt in your pocket. Yep. And that guy missed twice. So, that pressure, either the weight was too much, as well as the pressure, all of the above.
Yeah. And for the record, we don't know anything about it. Maybe, he's been fighting through an injury and he didn't want to hurt himself severely. Like, that's always on the table. So, I know the guy from Indonesia, if you were watching that session, like even Jalud was like just spraying lidocaine spray all over this poor guy's body. Like, just like half a can on this guy because he was in so much pain, you could tell. And these lifters have been training for 4 years intensely. Like, you don't know the whole backstory of what they're
sure.
capable at that point.
Sure. Yeah.
We're not for the record, backseat driving. We're just observing.
No, but yeah, I mean, as far as like Hampton's attempts, they did all the right things, and it was important. He had to take the 172, so that's why he went up, and because taking 168 again did nothing, right?
Yeah. It was also good that they stuck with numbers that like they knew where they were going to pin. I think that's the biggest thing, is like to take out of that, even for your beginner level athlete, is like you do numbers you're going to hit. You don't just throw shit at a wall and see if it sticks. Like, you go in with a plan, you attack the plan, you execute on the plan. And that's so that confidence is there.
Yeah, the only ways that they go towards your total are the ones that you make. And ultimately, like there's different priorities for different meets. This is the big show, right? There's nothing beyond this. There's nothing to qualify for. So it's just about getting third place or better. I mean, obviously sitting in fourth place isn't bad because people fail drug tests. There's there's reasons why you should want to make a total. But at the end of the day, you want to be bronze or better at the medal ceremony as it happens that day.
Yeah. So kind of segueing into the medal ceremonies and medals in general is like, you had talked in the beginning about the medals since, and I've been very vocal. I'll even go on the record like saying this is like, I've been more than vocal as a enthusiast of the sport over years of just being like, man, I don't know. And this is, again, I've trained since 2006, 2007. That's when I started my whole journey in Olympic weightlifting, is like, I don't know if I'm going to see an American medalist that's a male. Like, it's just seemed like such an uphill battle between all the, call it what it is, dirty countries that were just like farm producing athletes for years and years, just putting us on our ass because, we weren't doing that. And then just other issues that make it harder. And like, females, we were running the game, right? We've produced a ton of top tier females. And, we can talk about that. Like, we had planned on like why or what reasons males in America go to other sports or whatnot there. But like, it has been a long time, and it was cool to sit there in like grand scheme of things. Like, I've been saying this since 2006, 2007. I've been watching the sport. I've been observing it. I didn't think this shit could happen. And now I'm an old man. We're both young old men at the ripe age of 36, but like, I'm sitting in my own gym with my own coaches next to me, my own athletes, and I'm watching it with them, something I did not think would happen. And it was such a cool moment to sit there and be like, guys, you don't understand like what you're fucking watching right now. Like, I've watched so many come and go, and you're just like, you're getting in the sport and you just watched it happen immediately. Like, I've waited almost 20 years for this shit.
Yeah. It's been a long time, and won't get too in depth with this, but Mario Martinez was the last medalist. He was a super heavyweight and medaled at the LA Olympics in 1984. And that was a boycotted Olympics, so there's a little bit of an asterisk there, because if everybody had showed up, he probably wouldn't have medaled, right? But he did, and he got a silver medal. But that was 40 years ago. And prior to that, at a non-boycotted Olympics, 1976, Lee James got second place in the 90 kilo weight class. So that's 48 years ago. So that's the last time at a non-boycotted Olympics that we've had a male medalist. So it's been a long time, and there's several reasons for that. And part of it is culture within the sport. There's a couple rule changes that happened along the way. So the U.S. was pretty dominant in the press, and the press was eliminated in 1972. And so a lot of the training methods that were around at that time when the press was eliminated, so 72 to probably like it lingers, because you had a lot of successful coaches and athletes that were still alive who had won world championships, but they gained like a lot of their advantage in the press because the US was really good in the clean and press, but they weren't as good in the snatch because the snatch was the smallest piece of your total, so it wasn't as much of a focus, right? And so a lot of our training methods kind of became outdated as the press was eliminated and other countries began to break world records in the snatch. And yeah, up until 1964, you couldn't brush the body. And so there was still some of that weird carryover where people didn't quite understand how to use the hips and legs properly while brushing the body. And it took a long time because there was no YouTube. The only people who would see.
There's Muscle and what was it? Muscle and Fitness
Yeah, I mean,
magazine.
yeah, there would be like Muscle and Fitness magazine. There would be like pictures, still photos. There was like hardly any video from the World Championships. So the only way that you got to see international lifters who were really good at the snatch or utilizing new technique in the snatch was at the World Championships, which would happen once a year, and you would have a very small amount of people who would see it, and then from what I understand, the way they describe it to me, like Jim Smiths would explain, like they would go over there, they would see these lifts, and they would try to say, hey, it looks like he's doing this, and interpret it, but it's not like the other people from those countries were explaining to them their methodology in the snatch. I mean, it's their competitors, right?
Yeah,
And so
it was also a time of the world where not many two sides weren't really talking that often as well.
yeah. I mean, you got the Cold War going on, you got other things like culturally, but I will say, no matter what politically is going on, um, athletics brings people together. It's a
Absolutely,
totally
man.
different topic, but the only
This
thing I've
Olympics
found.
has showcased that so good.
Yeah, I mean, when we go to the World Championships, like you'll see like the North Koreans, for instance, and at first they're like almost scared of us. They think we're like bad people, and they don't want to get into elevators with us and stuff. And but they're like out of their country and they don't get to see get on the internet. So they'll get on the internet, hang out, whatever. They want people to buy drinks for them and stuff like that. They don't get to experience a lot of that at home. So by the end of it, they're usually pretty chill. Not like buddy, but they're not scared of us anymore. And so yeah, I think even probably back then, sport would bring people together without bringing politics too far into it. But
Absolutely.
it's definitely kind of a cool thing that sports do. But getting back to it, yeah, um, it's
I
been a
think
long time.
I think a lot of people also, like we were talking, like they don't know um like the US, you basically, I mean, call it what it is, you kind of tumble into weightlifting, right? Very few people are like carved out when they're a child. They're like, Johnny, you're going to be a weightlifter. It's like, no, you're going to be a football player. You're going to be a hockey player. You're going to be a baseball player. It's like, those are all like predetermined routes from parents or influences. And it's not really a predetermined like route of most parents or aspiring weightlifting son or daughter. And then, so like that creates kind of a little bit of a hiccup in the development of like long-term athletes from the get. But then also, like, there's a lot of countries where it's state funded, state sponsored, like me and you were chatting about. And I've had to explain to a bunch of athletes, is like down in South America, it's like, the government is giving money to the schools, and the schools are producing athletes, and those athletes then become coaches who have their degrees in kines or whatever, and then they work at the sporting school, so they bring all their experience as an athlete to it, and it's like this revolving door of just eons of experience to continue to produce. Versus here, it's like, hey man, you want to be a weightlifting coach? Buy the seminar and you can do it legally, and good luck. Hit us up if you get anyone really good. that's like a really rough brush over. So it's like, when you get the good ones, it's like, man, you really have to take care of them, and you really have to keep them engaged and continue like making them enjoy it, and not making it this like beat you to living shit process like other countries can, because it's state sponsored. But and like, so it's, from my experience at least, it's a tougher route to convince people to go sporting wise into the professional world of sporting versus other sports where there's scholarships and money and stuff like that backing it.
Yeah, for sure. There there's not as much top end opportunity. But, even in other sports, I think like a lot of other sports are glorified, but there's probably a lot of more obtainable opportunity in weightlifting than some other sports, but there's no $1 million contracts,
Yeah.
right? And so the window of opportunity and to get a multi-million-dollar contract is so small. Like there's the 1% of 1% make the NFL,
Yep.
right? And then only a certain amount of those people even make above the league minimum. And then of course, like your quarterbacks who are the best end up getting these ridiculous contracts, and so people think that the window of like, oh man, basically it's like winning the lottery, right? Um, in weightlifting, there is a lot of cool opportunity to travel and do things as a youth athlete, and it's even still like pretty obtainable. But you're right, it's different. I think when I first got started in weightlifting, I didn't even know it was a sport until I was like 16, and just got lucky finding out about it. Like I lifted weights, but
Yeah.
I wasn't a weight lifter. We just did strength and conditioning for other sports, and honestly, the reason why I did the other sports is so I can continue to lift weights because I like that part of it. And
Yeah.
then I found somebody who CJ Stockel, who was like, "Hey, you can be a weight lifter." And I was like, "Wait, this is like its own sport that's legitimate?" Um, sure. Why would I play the other sports? Because this is what I actually play the other sports to do.
Yeah.
So,
I knew weightlifting was a Olympic sport, like legit, because when I was like in third grade or some shit, there was like an after school program for like if your parents had to pick you up late, and they had like an old Mac and it had the diskette
mhm.
like games you would have to plug into it. And they had like an Olympics game, and there was like 9 different sports, like with the 2 buttons. So right, do track and field and AB to run. They had a weightlifting one, man.
Yeah.
They had a weightlifting one. I remember I was like,
It's
oh,
like,
so I knew weightlifting was a sport. I never
wa
did it
wasn't it
until I
like
was
a
in the
real
army.
slow, like, kinda press out
Yes,
thing
yes,
too?
it
It's
was.
like so it didn't even really look like
I
a
should find that and make that the thumbnail for this fucking podcast.
Yeah, yeah, that's pretty funny.
Um, but yeah, I didn't like my story. I'm not gonna get into like the depth of it, but like I didn't work out. I was like a chubby little gamer nerd that skated and BMX'd, and then I went to the army and I got in like army shape, and then you know deployed, and then I realized quickly like, oh, I should probably get in really good fucking shape. Um, and even then, I didn't find the Olympic lifts per se like outside of the traditional lifts until I really got injured and started CrossFitting. So like I tumbled into it. I think that's how a lot of modern people segue, right? They go from CrossFit into it, or they see it online and then they try it out. If anything, I've always said like social media and CrossFit is like a little bit kind of our godsend as a sport to helping popularize it
Yeah, and powerlifting too.
because it's flashy as shit.
I mean, powerlifting got the same boost, the COVID
Yep.
boost as well as the boost from CrossFit back in the day. But CrossFit was like it's basically like being the jack of all trades. So you bring together all these different sports and expose people to simple pieces of them. Like in CrossFit, you're gonna do some stuff on the rings and some handstand push-ups. And so you're introducing gymnastics to people, but it's nothing like gymnastics, right? And
Yeah.
the weightlifting part that you're doing in there and the powerlifting part you're doing in there is actually closer to the sports than the gymnastics pieces. But yeah, I mean, CrossFit was huge for it. There's no doubt. And really, Olivia's parents owned a CrossFit, or maybe still do, and that's how she got into it.
Yep.
And I think we're still seeing like these performances are from the boom that CrossFit created. And so we'll see, like, we have to create the next generation of that. Like, CrossFit is losing steam. At least I feel that way. Maybe it's just because I'm not into the culture of it anymore like I was. I was pretty far into the culture of CrossFit at some point. But I have no desire to watch the CrossFit games anymore, but maybe that's just me. I don't know. I'm not a gen pop person. I'm so far into weightlifting, it's hard to have perspective, you know?
Yeah. No, I don't think it's a hidden fact, right? Like I was in it. That's where I got my beginnings and stuff. It's definitely gone down in popularity, but I think it's going to stick around as a sport. It'll be just like BJJ, stuff like that. So there'll always be interest, but so long as there's that interest, it also provides us with a segue, right? And we need to
Yeah, yeah.
capitalize on those opportunities to get people segueing from that. Be like, oh my God, were you fifth at the CrossFit Games? How would you like to be first in American weightlifting?
Yeah, it was a
Look at the opportunity we can give you.
parabolic, like there was a fat element of CrossFit for a while, and there was like a parabolic increase in people doing it. You had everybody
Yeah.
doing CrossFit, and then they got their kids and grandkids and nieces and nephews into it, and it's almost like I mean, I wouldn't call CrossFit a cult, but it was sort of like you wanted to talk about it. You wanted to bring your friends to the cookout and bring people and introduce them to it and talk about it. I don't see as much of that in the general population anymore.
Yeah.
But it did introduce a ton of people to weightlifting, and I think that we're still getting the benefits from that era. Like, Hampton didn't directly get involved through there, but Olivia definitely did. Her parents owned a CrossFit. She started training, figured out, hey, I don't like to run, but I do like to lift weights. And then all of a sudden, she just responds to training so well. I find it interesting how some people just respond so well to training. I don't like to say that genetics is such a big factor, but it's definitely a factor, right?
100%.
Not
Yeah.
everyone responds to training the same way, and like CJ Cummings and Olivia, they both have siblings who are like 99% the same 99.999% the same genetics, and they're both really good lifters, but not the same. They don't respond the same as CJ. They don't respond the same as Olivia, and that's just so interesting
Yeah.
that some people just, it's like they're meant to be, right?
Yep. No, I definitely agree with that. Genetics does play the 1% that is the 1% that makes you just that freak. So, yeah. And speaking of Olivia, right? She's favored, like you mentioned in the beginning. She's favored to do really well.
Yeah, she lifts tomorrow. She lifts tomorrow. So really excited to see how she does. She's favored to win. So I mean, there's a lot of pressure, right? She's been to all these meets. She's obviously just had this storybook increase 6 for 6. Oh my God, she's snatching 120. She's on the cusp of world
Yeah.
records. But the fact that she's favored puts more pressure on her. And so it's just because people didn't do as well at the last couple qualifiers doesn't mean that those people won't show up to the big show in shape either. So, she definitely has what it takes to medal. She could possibly win, but it doesn't take much. You miss a couple lifts and the window of opportunity for somebody else opens, and they see that and jump right in. So, but like we said, if she's able to medal, then that's history. That would have never happened. And I think for weightlifting in general, the US market is so important for sports that the IWF does hope that the US does well so that NBC will cover it, right?
Oh yeah, they would do great for them.
And it helps the sport stay in the Olympics and increase slots if they can get some airtime. And so Hampton medaling, it's huge because and then if we could get a men's and a women's medalist and have them interview on NBC and expose that to kids and like show that people are receptive to these interviews and these
I feel
personal
like
stories, it makes a big
I feel like we're
difference.
talking about the Hunger Games right now.
Yeah, yeah.
We need our champions for our districts.
But I mean, that's one of the things that the IWF was telling Phil is that like if you guys could get a men's and a women's medalist, and we got really close, but with a fourth place from Harrison, but
Yeah.
you're not able to market that fourth place
Yep.
finish as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, and the Olympics are in an interesting place right now. Just getting back to like the Olympic topic is like they've been revamping what sports they're doing. They've been revamping what cities they're allowed to do, stuff like that, going for more of a greener, less footprint on the earth. They're purposely trying to bring in sports that are more more fun to watch, so they can continue to get viewers. Because they also have the statistics on like how many people are actually going, how many people are actually attending to come watch. And you have the amount of athletes going to the Olympics increasing. I think Rio is still statistically the highest amount of athletes that ever showed, but we're still like trending higher over the Olympic span. But like, if I remember the report I was reading, like the amount of people visiting and attending is less. So like, it's not as economically sound for these countries to do it. So they're trying to make sure they can make money on the opposite ends when it comes to viewing and spectating and stuff like that. So it does become important that larger countries like the US and major nations are viewing it, because that's going to pay the bills, which ultimately keeps sports in it.
Yeah, I mean, when you think of large countries in terms of like population that are in the Olympics, you have the U.S., and that's going to be the most watched because NBC is just has so much coverage. But then, you got China and Russia. Well, Russia's not in the Olympics right now, so that takes out a lot of the viewership and the interest that you might have from there.
Yep.
So yeah, it even magnifies the importance of the U.S. presence when it comes to, and it is about making money, right? I would say as far as like TV rights and all that, that's probably $1 billion thing right there. However, for the country building the infrastructure, it is a huge undertaking, and they lose tons of money. They really don't make any money, and so it is important that people go travel there, like you're saying, because one of the reasons why the government puts up that money is because they're going to get tourist money that floods, the hotels, the restaurants, all that stuff, and then just like, increases basically like the money coming in and flowing into businesses there. And if that's not really happening, then no one's really motivated to bid on the Olympics and keep it going. So it is important to have popularity, but it has gone from an amateur thing where a lot of the sports were Olympic only sports, and now it's like, I don't know, I have mixed emotions about it because I enjoyed watching the US play Serbia today in basketball, but I view like the NBA as the apex of basketball, and
Yeah.
like Wimbledon the apex of tennis, or like other championships. And so the Olympics is less important. And I think like real Olympic sports like wrestling, weightlifting, water polo, stuff like that, the apex of those sports is the Olympics, and track and field, and even swimming. I feel like those are like true Olympic sports where you're essentially still an amateur, even if you're making like a stipend or have like, there's very few people until they have a certain amount of success. Of course, Michael Phelps was getting paid a lot of money in endorsements at some point, but he wasn't his first Olympics when he was very young. That developed with performance.
Yep.
So, but yeah, so I mean, huge accomplishment for Hampton. First time in 40 years or 48, depending on how you view it, and you're just kind of up against it. There's a lot of sacrifice that has to be made in weightlifting. But
Yeah, I think especially at that age too. That's it's one of those critical ages, right? Where like you were saying in the beginning, is like this is the time where you go out, you're doing things, you're meeting people, and you are focused in the gym. You are not out there being the social animal of your 20-year-old self. You're not doing that version. So it's like the sacrifices that come there, even you're putting on the back burner, it's very easy. It's always the easier choice to do what's potentially wrong for your path, right? So
yeah, I mean, you have to sacrifice and have extreme sacrifice to make the Olympics. It's the window of opportunity is really, really small. I pursued the Olympics a few times, and the closest I got, I was the third ranked lifter in 2016, but we only got to send one male. So Kendrick Ferris got to go to the Olympics, and there were several things that happened that any one of them could have went a different way, and we would have got 3 spots.
yeah,
So essentially, there were a couple qualifying meets that would have happened, but if I had maintained my ranking, like I made it to every single international competition that quad except the Olympics, and only one person in the entire United States got to compete regardless of weight class. And so when you explain that to people, they're like, "Oh, per weight class?" And I'm like, "No, like I was ranked number 1 in my weight class
Yeah.
and had won nationals 3 times, but I didn't get to go because only one person, period, got to go."
Yeah.
Um,
Of the whole population.
yeah, yeah. And so the window of opportunity is very small, and so you have to sacrifice a lot. And you have to compete back to back, like especially the new qualification procedure. Um, it's amazing that Hampton and Olivia are still healthy.
Yeah.
You compete so frequently, and you have to travel. I mean, travel takes a lot out of you, and no matter what my age was, like getting on a plane for 8 hours always made me feel like shit, and it took me like
Yep.
a week to recover from it.
And
Always.
travel is also like, I think a lot of times people just think like travel is like, oh, well, you travel, you go there, and then it's done. It's like, okay, no. Like you go to some of these meets and it's like, so we don't know where we're staying. We're here, but we don't have a hotel. We don't know what we're eating for dinner. Where are we finding water? There's no AC, but we're in like a country where it's 98 out every day of the every hour. It's not just like the airplane. Like any athlete that is complaining about traveling and going to another nation, it is legitimately, like as far as I'm concerned, a legit complaint and concern. Because you get to like one of my athletes, we went to Poland and like she wasn't even a picky eater, but she was cutting, and then literally like the training hall in Poland, all the like I don't know why. I'm Polish. I like Polish sausage, but like, bro, it was like hot dogs for breakfast or eggs, and it was like legit every day, just hot dogs or eggs. And
Yeah.
Kaylin's like, I can't eat another fucking hot dog, and she did not eat eggs. And it was like we had to walk to a supermarket after we got approval to do it and like buy food. But even then, like you're in a foreign country, you don't know what you want to eat, you don't know what you can. And she basically was just eating like bread most of the time and peanut butter and jelly.
Yeah, it's so much better now. Like when I first started making international teams, especially when it was a Pan Am competition, like you never knew what you were getting into. You may not have good AC. You may not have like a toilet that flushes very well.
Pan Am's is a wild
It,
card, bro.
it might smell bad. You might get sick from the water, so you gotta even brush your teeth with bottled water. There's a lot of factors. I would say now like things are more predictable. Weightlifting used to be like a very low dollar sport, and so you weren't going to the nicest cities. And when a country was hosting the world championships, they weren't always able to get a room block at the nice hotel, and so you would kind of show up and you would be in a lot of ghetto places, and uh you had to watch what you were eating, and a lot of the public restrooms don't have toilet paper in South America, so
Yeah.
we're not used to carrying toilet paper in your backpack. But there's some funny stories where uh some people they went to the bathroom at the stadium and they didn't have toilet paper, and they did what they had to do, I guess we'll put it that way. But you know
Seashells.
then they come back
Two,
and
two
it's
seashells.
like don't shake their hand. But
Yeah, no.
no, it's
Yeah, I mean
it's a
it's
different lifestyle.
dude, we did one of the first meets I actually like formally met Ham was Saudi for Youth Worlds.
Hmm.
And I just remember like all those kids being like, this is amazing. And me and Mike just saying there be like, do not get jaded. This is not what meets are like.
Yeah, yeah.
Like we're in Saudi Arabia, we're like, no. This is not how meets are. You are so jaded right now. This is the best of the best. You will never experience this ever again. Just know everything from here is going to be a disappointment.
Yeah, I've never actually been there. I was invited to be the team leader to that meet, and ended out like turning it down because I ended up making a world team a couple months later. But
Yeah.
it looked like a freaking awesome. I love the
Oh
pictures
my
that
God.
you guys have with the birds and the
Yeah,
and
dude,
the
it's so
Christian.
cool. And I honestly, speaking of Hamp, I feel bad because he was cutting and like managing his weight, and we're all going to like this elaborate. I have photos I can send you. It's the only way to describe it. This elaborate chow hall.
Mhm.
We're like, dude, I don't even know how much money probably got wasted because it wasn't all getting eaten, but we're talking 2 tables lengths of dessert every night. And that's just the dessert, dude. It was
Mhm.
intense. Hamp is up there counting no shit grains of rice
Yeah, yeah.
because that's like how dialed in he was to make sure he like the weight class. And I'm just like, oh no, this is there's oh man, you get it. You're so focused. I'm gonna go enjoy this dessert, bro.
Yeah, yeah. And it paid off for him, and
Oh hell yeah.
so it's but yeah, that window of opportunity is so small. It takes the right person. I do think that Hampton has kind of optimized what he's done so far, so hopefully he sticks
Really.
with it. I think it's like one of those things when you see people doing things that you didn't think necessarily were possible. So for instance, you were like, hey, I didn't know if I would ever see this. Now that you have this expectation that it's possible, maybe when you have that kid come along that is talented, you'll have a different
Oh
perspective,
yeah,
right? And
absolutely. I had that discussion the other day. And anyone that knows me knows exactly who I had it with. I was like, listen, I didn't think it could be done. I was questioning whether it could be, and now it has been done, which means it will be done again.
yeah,
And that's the end of the conversation.
and hopefully not in 40 years, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And but I think
Yeah.
I think we have a reasonable pipeline, and when we see and the culture shifts that like this is the new normal, this is possible, just like when the 4-minute mile was broken, like there's an expectation that this is possible. The one thing that I hope doesn't happen is that I hope that coaches that are coaching athletes who are really good but maybe not quite at that level don't fill the kids with unreasonable
Yeah.
expectations and put too much pressure on them and burn them out. But
Yep.
I hope that the kids who do have it within them are pushed and exposed to people who have done the right things to get there, like Hampton. Not everyone's going to be as dialed in, and maybe you don't have to be as obsessed, but you take like I would say Hampton's approach is similar to like Tom Brady, everything is really right. But not every great athlete takes the exact same approach. But with that exposure and expectation, hopefully those people who do have the ability within them can be diligent, take things seriously, understand that these opportunities mean something, and we'll see what happens. But hopefully, Hampton can get interviews and do well at them at different places. He's sort of an introverted guy, but if he can um, do some things to potentially monetize it, it would also help to
Yeah.
show future lifters that like, hey, only the 1% of 1% reaches this level, but if you can, there's actually a reward at the end as well, aside
Yep.
from just saying, I did this. So
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad you brought up that last piece too, is like that he is semi introverted when you first talk to him, and it gets a while for him to like want to warm up and finally get talking. But like I think that's gonna do well for the sport in general because it shows other 16 to 20-year-old males that are out there in gyms right now training like, oh, like I don't have to wait till I'm 30 to get really strong. It's not this long, arduous road that everyone just kind of stereotypes like, oh, you have to train for 8, 9 years to get to that level of strength. Like it's doable. You just have to stay focused and have a good
yeah,
flight path. And you can do some crazy shit.
and Olivia and Hampton are obviously have certain genetics where they respond to training very quickly, but for some people it might take until they're 28 or 30, and just because you don't reach a certain level by the time you're 20 doesn't mean that you can't by the time you're 28, 30.
Exactly.
So everyone's different, and you see this.
Hey, you can do it later than that, right? Our oh my god, I'm gonna draw a blank on her name, but our Colombian female that won worlds. She went to multiple Olympics. She was in her late 30s when she finally stopped lifting.
Yeah, I mean, I'm drawing a blank. I mean, I know Lady Solis is.
Yeah, Solis was up there. There's another one, and but like there's like Travis, like cut the weeds. Like I've had an athlete talk to Travis. Travis has been in the sport for a long time. I was gonna call him out when he was talking in the beginning. Like I've had some successes in this. Yeah, okay, guy, cool. Being humble. The reality is like just because you're 29 doesn't mean you can't do something in the sport. Just because you've trained since you were 12, you took a pause when you were 18, 19 so you could go be a kid and enjoy life a little bit and then came back to it, your career's not done. You can continue on this sport and you continue loving it. You can lift and love it the rest of your life, right? That's something you can do the rest of your life so
Yeah.
long as you want to. You can be competitive for a really long time. I think more than most people think you can, because it's so stereotyped, like, well, you only have so much time. It's like, that's kind of being disproved in a lot of sports right now. You can do really well at later ages.
Well, and a
In
lot
a
of
lot.
times too, when you saw, people being introduced, they were, I would be interested to see what the average age was in different weight classes this time around, because there was a lot of introductions. This person's 30, 31, 32, and it was widely accepted that like 26 was the average age of a medalist and the ideal age. And like average, like, I mean, Hampton's 20, Olivia's like 20 or 21 or something. And so, if those people medal, they're going to bring the average down. So like you have someone who's 31 and 21, then that's 26, right? So,
Yep.
I mean, averages are kind of interesting, but it would be cool to look at like the older medalists, or like, how many people were able to maintain a certain level. I mean, obviously, the longer you're in a sport and the closer you are to your genetic potential, the slower your progress is going to be. That's just the way it is. Um, from my experience, like life, the more stress you have, the less likely you are to improve or maintain a high level. But I'm 36 and I currently feel like if I was 100% focused on weightlifting, I could do all-time PR lifts, right? I'm spread very thin, and so, unless I was given a certain opportunity, I wouldn't actually like drop everything to do weightlifting again.
Goodbye, family.
But yeah, like obviously I would never do that. But
Yeah.
it's I think if I was able to, like, I don't feel like age is the thing that is currently holding me back. And, I have my life ordered in a way where I can train for a while. So, I mean, I think I can train at a certain prioritization level until I'm, 40 or so, and
Yep.
see like how much can I maintain. A lot of that depends on, am I able to stay healthy? And again, like, I'm a solid lifter, but I fully recognize like Hampton's on a different level. Like, there's CJ Cummings is on a totally different level when he was at his best, right? And so I understand, like, I'm not like a top lifter, but I want to push the limits a little longer to see like how long I can do this. So maybe when that special lifter is deciding, like, Hampton's 24 and he's like, do I want to go another quad? It's like, well, we have some evidence here to say, well, so and so made a world team at 40. So,
Yep.
like, who's to say that you can't maintain your level until you're at least 30,
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
it's more about that. So, but anyways.
Yeah, good, man. Yeah, I mean, so again, congrats to Hampton. Congrats to the Team USA, everyone that supports him. There's clearly an army of people that support Hamp and Trip and their whole crew down there. Travis, I think that's probably a good spot to kind of end it off on, and definitely looking to have you on the Tough Lift podcast to talk about your own extensive career as we've gone over in weightlifting, and just some very useful tidbits and crumbs I'm sure you've learned along the way. Also with coaches that you've been able to train with and other athletes that I know you've trained with, stuff like that. So would like to have you on for that. Thanks for collaborating with me. Obviously, I mentioned that one of my goals this year for the podcast was to like co-collaborate for this season. So that was cool being the first one. I obviously, when I got into the sport, was watching you train and watching your videos and stuff. So it's cool being able to do this with you, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. We wanted to jump on because this is such a historical moment, and I think the one thing that people can learn from Hampton's approach is just, his dad's a scientist, and so they collected data and they just continued to, use that scientific approach. Is something working? Keep it. If something's not working, don't keep it, and just train hard and do the right things, within reason. But yeah, for those of you out there that are Tough Lift listeners, but not the Weightlifting Scoop listeners, you can find me at Travis Cooper 77kg on Instagram.
Go follow this man.
And if anyone would be interested in collaborating on a podcast, or we had a pretty popular podcast at one point, and then took some time off and kind of looking to revamp it, especially since so much good stuff is going on during the Olympics. I was like, got to do some episodes. So yeah,
this is the time.
Thanks for collaborating with me, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, guys. Like Travis said, please find us on Instagram, on social media outlets, where the podcasts are. Like, follow, subscribe, and share, please. Word of mouth is always the best. We appreciate it. And that we will see you guys on the next episode. Thanks, Travis.
Thank you.